Hello there, YouTube. I'd like to show off in my crazy collection of stuff that I like to work on how I've chosen to deal with this cool little 12-inch PowerBook G4. I would give you the clock speed of the processor if I knew what it was, but I cannot be bothered to find out in this moment. So, with this computer, one thing I noticed, so it for the most part fully works, but the problem was that this fan right here was noisy as crap. It sounded like a little diesel truck. Now, as far as I know, a PowerBook G4 should not sound like a little diesel truck. So, I want to show you how to deal with it. Of course, you know, they usually say, replace the fan, replace the fan. Look, this computer's from like 2004, okay? I don't think Apple has cared to make new fans in years. Not like Apple actually makes the fans anyway. So, instead of that, take this sticker off. Don't bother tearing this thing down to get to the other side, because that's actually not where the lube goes. It's actually easier to get to this side. I found that out the hard way. So, once you're here, you just deposit some oil in there, just like that. That'll make this thing run way better. And this is what I like to do. I'll hook up a fan to my bench supply so that the fan can run, the oil will break in and make it nice and smooth of a runner. I've already done that before filming the footage, but nonetheless, yeah, that's kind of what I like to do. And thanks to that, we're not paying somebody money for another ancient fan that is probably also on the verge of death. So yeah, don't bother replacing fans if you don't absolutely have to, even if it might seem a little bit unintuitive. Now, the other predicament, however, as some of you have probably already noticed, well, somebody actually worked on this thing before I did, and they replaced the hard drive. That's pretty cool. The issue, though, is that they over-tightened the heatsink screw over here, and it actually pulled the stand off. And through enough finagling, I managed to get them both off of the heatsink. This one was not broken, but I just desoldered it with my trusty soldering iron here. So, yeah, so I'm gonna have to rework this somehow. So, I was reading online, and you know, on one hand, you can just resolder the little anchor. That's great and all, but the problem is, the other one actually snapped in two, because I had to use vice grips to separate it from the actual screw, because they had torqued that so tight. Therefore, unfortunately, I do not have another anchor to use. Let's be honest, if it split off the board as it was probably on the way out. So, we're going to have to think of another solution. So, here's my thought. Using this standoff, I found that this standoff is an M2 thread. So, what I could do is actually take one of these M2 screws, sand the top, and then solder it onto the motherboard, just, you know, pretty much replicating the original standoffs, and then I can even reuse the original screws on here. One documented idea that I found online was to actually take the board out and run the screws like this out through the back. The problem with that is that, in case you don't know, these things are a grand pain in the to work on because they have like 7 billion screws. And I really don't want to take the circuit board out, because as it was really aggravating just taking this like magnesium frame piece out to get to the back of that fan, because this whole thing right here, the fan is actually like, it's screwed to that. And all that to find out I never even had to get to that side to begin with. It was all on this side. So, phooey on that. I am not taking this board out. So, why do that if instead of doing that, I can simply take an M2 threaded screw, any which one of these, and then stick it in my drill press vise and sand the screw head. So that way, the solder will bond, and I can just fixate it straight to the motherboard. It's really no weaker than the original solution, because as it was, if you look at this standoff here, this was on top of the motherboard. Like, it was like this. I did not have to remove the board, as I'm sure you gathered, in order to get this out. I just had to heat up that solder joint. So, we're pretty much functionally doing the exact same thing Apple did, except I'm using leaded solder because I'm not a masochist. Or rather, at least not enough of a masochist that I would both be spending so much time fixing ancient computers like this and using lead-free solder to do it. Who does that? Not me. Because if there's anything that some of these old machines have taught us, it certainly isn't that lead-free solder is reliable. But none of these computers heard me say that. But especially not this device. And also to show you what I mean about these screw threads, so you can see that fits into there beautifully. This is the one remaining intact standoff from the PowerBook. And I'll grab one of the M2x3 screws here. Ideally put it thread side down and into, you know, this standoff here. This standoff is just a demonstration piece. It is not at all from the PowerBook. And you can see, yeah, so same thread. Then the next thing we will need to check is the length. And this will be a little bit tricky because obviously you can see this isn't only a screw there, but I would say that looks like a match to me. So that's pretty cool. And if I got to adjust it, I will, whatever. I'm not going to complain about this. So, we'll go ahead and start sanding, which, for the uninitiated, that is a requirement because solder is not exactly just going to stick to the black paint on these screws. It's going to need a bare metal surface. And I do not need to move these screws. They are literally just there to provide threads. Now, I'm actually going to try and locate the screws here with the thickest heads on them. Yeah, that looks good. That looks great. So, we're just going to go ahead and fixate that into the drill press vise here. They're nice and firm. And we'll go ahead and get sanding away. I think that should be perfectly adequate. Just wanted to make sure to roughen it up enough so that we know we have a very good bond with the solder. We can see that the surface of the screws, sorry, my camera work, I'm a bit of an amateur, admittedly, but you can see that the surface of the screws are plenty roughened, which is exactly what you want for increased surface area, for better bonding of the solder. So that way we hopefully can completely prevent this from ever reoccurring. So now we'll go ahead and tin the screws with our nice sizable soldering tip here. Get a nice layer of solder on that. And then we'll heat up the screw anchor holes over there, and then it should fixate. little cumbersome doing these things one-handed. I do understand I don't exactly have the most tidy, perfectly organized workshop. I hope you are not offended by any possible disorganization that you see. Alright, are we getting the tin? It's not perfect. I may need to sand it more, or I may just need to do some of this off camera. Go ahead and do that. Oh, hey, we're getting there. We're getting there. Might need some flux. And it's also possible maybe this big boy drill press vise right here is kind of sucking in some of the heat. I'll just go ahead and crank up the temperature on here and go ahead and just put a little bit of flux on this guy. We'll see what happens. I am not fussed. If I gotta sand it more, I will. Whatever comes our way. I am here for the ride. Okay, check that out. Starting to get a screw anchor. It is looking a little cloudy. I'm gonna keep tinning it. I know my camera works a little janky swanky. Sorry. Well, I'm just gonna try and keep this up until it looks maybe a little more shinier. Less clumpy and crappy looking, ideally. That's probably about where it's just gonna have to be. It is what it is. Alright. I'll just put some more flux on there because there's not really any reason why not. Alright. I think that's a little better. So, just go ahead and push it flat so we can put it on top of the holes over here. Now, let's see how my genius solution is about to work. Hopefully this is a good idea and that there's not going to be somebody in the comments screaming about this being a really, really bad idea and that I'm about to blow up this entire PowerBook because I am stupid and couldn't think of a better way to do it. But I guess that's how we learn, right? Alright. I'd say those are looking mighty fine. We're just gonna go ahead and solder them on now. Who said I can't use my solder spool as a phone stand, huh? Hopefully I don't bump it. And hopefully I don't break this motherboard. Oh yeah, it's bonding. It is bonding. And ideally we want to make sure to get it about as centered as possible. Although thankfully with the way that Apple designed this, it's actually pretty forgiving. And we really don't need to be exact with the science of it. Yeah, I know what you're thinking. Who knew that Apple of all companies would have anything that's designed forgiving? I'm surprised too. So, check that out. So now, we've got two nice little M2 screw threads protruding from the motherboard like nothing had ever gone wrong. Just now with a little more flux and unusual ingenuity, I suppose. Now, I guess we'd be doing ourselves a good favor to try and maybe clean some of this flux off. So we'll go ahead and pour some alcohol on here, also providing the CPU with some cleanliness in the process. Use a good old toothbrush. Scrubby scrub. All while the fan's getting a workout. Whoop. All right. And now we'll just go for a little sanity test. Yeah, that's solid. Those aren't going anywhere. Love to see it. So we're gonna go ahead and put the heatsink on, hoping for the best. Okay, welcome back. I have went and I cleaned this up. As you can see, I also did a nice little detailing job on our processor over here. That's nice and clean. I've got the last of an old tube of Arctic Silver 5 spent onto this weird heatsink deal over here. And now for the magical moment. But first, let me show you this. So you can see, yep. That sucker is not going anywhere. That is solid. And test the other one. Yep. Beautiful. I would call that as good as OEM. It's like it never even broke. And I'll just get you a real good shot of how that looks. Just bask in it. Okay. Now, the magical moments. And see if we can get that fragment of thermal pad to straighten out a little bit. Cables out of the way, and on goes the heatsink. And look at that, you can see them little screw posts protruding through just as they did. And yeah, okay, that looks good. All right, this piece might be a little bit bent up from all the work that's happened with it. Nonetheless, we'll go ahead and put that on. Beautiful. Look at that. That heatsink is fastened. That's not going anywhere. Our fan has been lubricated. It'll be definitely sounding a whole lot better than it did. That is marvelous. So, all that's left, I do just want to, well, of course, reassemble this madness that we have here, and I'll be sure to demonstrate its performance.